The demolition industry of today stands on the shoulders of giants, and those shoulders belonged to the industry's forebears. These were great men that shaped the sector through vision, determination, and pure force of will. All that the industry is today can be traced back to the foresight and wisdom of those leaders of the past. They looked beyond the now, they looked beyond the next project, and they looked beyond the next paycheck. They worked not just for themselves, but for a greater good, a bigger ideal. And while they were unquestionably highly competitive, they sought unity rather than division. They recognized that a rising tide lifts all boats, and in doing so, they built the foundations upon which the demolition industry of today now stands. I was asked last week during one of my Breakfast Show live streams who I believe to be the demolition visionaries of today. And to be honest, the question initially stumped me. But after a lot of thought, I eventually came up with the names of four demolition professionals that I believe to be blessed with the foresight required to be called a visionary. But as their names were coming out of my mouth, I realised that two of the four were actually in the throes of retirement. Admittedly, mine was not a comprehensive list. The question had caught me on the back foot. But half of the men I consider to be present day visionaries are actually heading, reluctantly and regrettably, for the exit. The two that remain from my initial list are the incumbent president of the Institute of Demolition Engineers, Adrian McLean, and the immediate past president of the European Demolition Association, Stefano Panseri. Now, I will admit, I've thought of a few more since, but two across a global industry that employs thousands of men and women. That's surely a damning statistic. And it's a deeply worrying statistic too, because the global demolition industry requires vision and foresight now, perhaps more than any time in its history. Who, for example, has the vision to realize that even the word demolition now carries negative connotations? That despite the sector leading the way towards a circular economy, the word demolition is now inextricably linked to the loss of embodied carbon. Who has the vision to realize that our long standing failure to attract new talent into the industry has made our talent pool ever more narrow and ever more shallow? That our failure to plug the skills gap will one day force us to accept that we will need to adopt some kind of automation or autonomy if we are to retain workloads? Who has the vision to realize that the days of diesel fuel are numbered, that the industry's future lies in electric or hydrogen fueled machines? Who is seeking to understand the practical and logistical implications of such a switch? Who has the vision to recognize that the industry's mostly white, mostly male workforce is already a relic? That the racism and misogyny that has been tolerated for so long are actually holding the industry back while doing enormous damage to the sector's public reputation? Who has the vision to realize that mental health awareness and the provision of mental health first aiders are a sticking plaster on a festering and growing wound? A wound that can be treated only with some major shifts in working practices and not by posters on site and the occasional toolbox talk. Who has a vision to recognise that the damage done by the Competition and Markets Authority investigation didn't end with the £60 million in fines handed down? That the industry's reputation is tarnished and that no one is attempting to restore its sheen? That in the eyes of the public, the media, and many within the construction industry, demolition is now coloured by corruption? Where once there was vision and loudly spoken ambition, there's now a blindness and a deafening silence. Leadership has been eroded, and where the industry was once proactive, it's now reactive. We no longer shape our industry, we've surrendered being shaped by others. In many ways, the demolition industry of today is reminiscent of family companies passed down through generations. It was shaped originally by men with vision, with foresight, and with fierce determination. That industry was inherited by some that built upon that legacy and maybe expanded it. But it's now been handed to individuals that have been spoiled, that are content to live off past glories and bask in the reflected glories of their forebears. It sometimes feels like the last days of a once great empire. The edifices are crumbling and the cracks are showing. We desperately need a visionary new leader, dozens of them ideally, to take us into the new age.